Hi friends, hope you're doing well, and today I want to talk about sex. More importantly, I want to talk about sexual obsession with the narcissist or other cluster B personality disorder. And the reason why I want to do this right now and talk about this is because recently, almost in every single session with my clients dealing with this, the sex eventually comes up. And I think a lot of times we feel shameful about bringing this up and we don't know where we stand with it or how to deal with it. But some of these things need to be talked about. And having that obsession with sex with that narcissist is very normal. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about why we get so obsessive over that sex. I want to talk about how that sex is with a narcissist. And I also want to talk about how you can move on with your life and know that you will find good sex and you will find intimacy. Sex with a narcissist or other cluster B personality disorder, usually the sex with a narcissist is amazing. It's awesome. It is like the sex that you see in porn oftentimes. It's stuff that really is quite interesting. It's very rare. And a lot of clients that I work with actually express that it's kind of the best sex that they've ever had. For many of us, when we deal with the situation and we're in the process of that, it's so new and exciting, it's a whirlwind, and it really just drums up all the senses. At the same time, your partner usually is using a lot of sex talk to lead up to the sexual act itself, and it becomes very fantasy driven, something you've only dreamed about, and it becomes something like overwhelmingly obsessive. And you begin to obsess about it, especially after the relationship is over. You have a tendency to wonder if you're ever going to have this quality of sex ever again. You begin to reminisce about it, you begin to romance it, even to the thought process, thinking about what they wore, how it happened, when it started, all those things. And we begin to romance the relationship based on the actual sex itself. Now, on the flip side, I want to point out that a lot of this intensity, if you really think about it, when you were in the bedroom or wherever y'all were having sex, a lot of the intensity was almost faked. It was almost fabricated in a way. And a lot of times that was like the build up to it, the talk up to it. It was very fantasy driven. It was very fast. And it was very intense. And oftentimes too, because we're unaware of why it's so intense. And because we're unaware of why it's so amazing to us, we overlook some of the, I like to say, mechanical aspects of the act itself. Because we're all like in that moment and in that whirlwind and just, oh my God, I mean, this is amazing. Oh my gosh, we overlook the fact that it's quite mechanical in nature. And we can also overlook the fact that a lot of times, the reason why we feel that way is because we're looking for an emotional attachment. We're looking for intimacy, and to some degree, we're kind of thinking that sex and intimacy are the same things when they're not. Now, some of you out there could say, hey, I was dating a narcissist or a cluster B personality disorder, someone else in that cluster B, and we weren't having that much sex. It was really the opposite. We rarely had it. If we did have it, for some of you it might have been good. For some of you, it might have almost felt like currency because you didn't get it very often, but when you did, you got it, but you dreamed of it. Some of you actually had sex for about a whole year while y'all were together, and then after that, the sex has literally dwindled off, and you are constantly daydreaming about those sexual acts that took place a year, 2 years, even 3 years ago, and hoping and praying that it comes back at some point. Oftentimes, the narcissist that happens to be involved with this opposite sexual behavior either was shamed at an early age about sex or morally brought up to withhold sex or to not give sex because they felt shame about the act of sex. And sometimes it could be somebody actually holding back sex as currency in a power play to get what they want. Now, it's interesting how in both of these occasions, a lot of times we can get very obsessed over it. In one occasion, because it's the most wildest sex that we've ever had, even though it's quite mechanical, and it's a real power play because that sex is used, as well as on the flip side, it's a power play, but it's like we reminisce about the old times and think that we can have that back. I think we get very obsessed about it first and foremost is because sex is really not intimacy. And because in these relationships, it's hard to be intimate with this other person. It's hard to get in there. It's hard to get connected to them. It feels almost like a divide a lot of times. It feels like it's hard to connect. But when you're actually having sex with them, it's like for the first time you actually feel truly and highly connected to them. You feel like you're part of them. And that's why I believe that we kind of superimpose intimacy as sex, and it becomes so extremely explosively obsessive. And we become obsessed because it's trying to get that thing that we just can't seem to get. And we get that little crumb when we have sex and we're like, gosh, we just want more of it. We want more of it. But we realize it's not really about the sex. It's about really connecting with that person on an emotional level, even if the sex is wild and crazy, if you really step back and look at it, you realize that it's more mechanical than emotional. You know, the next thing is that I think we all want to feel connected, and we all want to feel loved, we all want to be loved, and that's normal. And I think a lot of us want to have sex, and we like to have sex as well. But I think that oftentimes in these particular relationships, because of the situation of the partner and where they're mentally at, there's an inability to have that intimacy. Oftentimes because they don't love themselves, okay? Because they don't love themselves. Many narcissists and other cluster B personality disorder will actually hate themselves and despise themselves. And because of that, they cannot connect on a specific emotional love level. It's really impossible until they're able to forgive themselves from whatever they're angry about, or from their past, or from the shame, or the combination of. And so in the process, we try to get closer to them and closer to them and closer to them, but the only time we feel like we get close is sex. And so that's why the obsession is so overwhelming. When I do meet with clients, when they're leaving a relationship of this type, and they talk about the sex, one of the things that I offer and suggestions that really helps is to taking some time off to get to know yourself. After that relationship, and when you begin to start dating, oftentimes we'll rush into another relationship, and we're also scared too, because we wonder, will it be the same? Will it be different? Will we ever have sex of that magnitude again? And I think we put the cart in front of the horse, when in reality we need to really take a look at ourselves, overcoming a lot of things that happen in that relationship, as well as dealing with our own emotional baggage after leaving. And one of that is the whole intimacy and sex concept, because a normal relationship based on love and a two-way street, giving and receiving, you feel love and you feel intimacy, and it's not only based in sex. You can be spending time with someone, you can be cooking dinner with somebody, you can be talking about a book that you read or a place that you want to visit on this planet. And it's a very intimate, loving, nurturing experience that you didn't receive in that previous relationship. And so yes, the sex can still be good, but it's not the only basis of intimacy that you have. And that's why the sex took on an entirely different life of its own. Because it was more than sex. It was the intimacy. It was the connection. It was the love. It was all that wrapped up in one thing. And we didn't realize that it wasn't really that at all. That's just the morsel that we were given. So I often advocate the time of taking some time off to get to know yourself, really getting to understand who you are, overcoming any of that baggage in your life by really focusing on who you are and finding that love within yourself. You know, I wrote a book called The 10-Day Challenge to Live Your True Life, and it talks about boundaries and overcoming negativity and finding that self-love. And the reason why I wrote the book is it was a process that I went through. And I had to go through that and learn all those steps, because I too was in several relationships with narcissists. And I wanted that intimacy and love. And I thought it was the sex component, and it wasn't. And it left me feeling very empty and wondering, will I ever find that connection? But better yet, will you ever have good sex again? And the answer to that is yes, you can. And yes, you can find a great relationship, but we got to let go of our own baggage and not move into a relationship with baggage again. One other thing too is to really watch yourself from fantasizing about your ex-partner, your ex-narcissist partner, and the sex. The more we fantasize about that, the more we drum up that emotional feeling, and the more we disconnect from our current situation, and the more we feel like we're never going to find somebody again. And remember, for many of you out there, maybe the first real relationship you ever had was with a narcissist. And it can be very overwhelming because you don't really know what a real relationship is. And so I ask you to begin to really analyze, starting a journal and writing down, what is it about a relationship that you want? What is it about a partner that you would like to have? Is it compassion? Is it humor? Is it having fun together? Is it connecting on a spiritual level? And writing those things down and really organizing your heart and your mind to know what a real intimacy and relationship is, to overcome this past obsession. You deserve intimacy in your life. And in order to have true intimacy in a new relationship, you have to let go of this obsession and realize that part of that obsession was like a drug. Okay? When you're having sex with a narcissist, it's so much like having a hardcore drug. And then literally going through the withdrawals, and going through the sweating, the withdrawals and everything, and then getting it again and getting even higher and higher and higher off of it. And that drug will put that imprint in your mind, and you'll rate all other sex to that drug. And so for your own sanity and happiness, I ask you to begin to let go of the obsession, recognize when you're obsessing over it or thinking about it, and actually honestly letting it go, and realize in your heart and remind yourself that the reason why you're so obsessed with that particular sex was that was as close as you could get to that person, and you extremely wanted intimacy, and they couldn't do it. I hope this has helped you. And if you have any thoughts or comments, please leave them in the comments below. If you haven't already subscribed, subscribe to the channel. And I really appreciate you watching this video. It means a lot to me. Have a great day and live your true life.